consider great light, my first tendency is to romanticize the idea. My mind conjures up images of bright white clouds, sunshine, and plump little cherubims playing their harps. I might then go to a more practical image of a blindingly sunny day. Consider what the image and the concept of great light stirs up for you. We are in the church season of Epiphany. This is a season where we celebrate the light that Christ brought to the world. While we consider this light a gift, we should also remember that light in its truest form is a disruptive force. You see, since the beginning of creation, light has been driving out the darkness. Sometimes, light illumines the world with a soft glow and makes things look beautiful and whole. But sometimes, the light disrupts the darkness and shows the world as it is. Our gospel text today tells us about Jesus proclaiming the good news of the kingdom. Jesus was bringing light. He was preaching that the kingdom was breaking into a world that is sometimes consumed by darkness. As I was preparing for this sermon, I came across a story about Mother Teresa that I would like to share with you. Mother Teresa was once in Melbourne, Australia, where she visited a poor man who nobody knew existed. The room in which she was living was in a terrible state of untidiness and neglect. There was no light in the room. The man hardly ever opened the blinds. He hadn't had a friend in the world for some time. She started to clean and tidy the room, and at first the man protested, saying, "Leave it alone. It's fine. It's all right as it is." But she went ahead anyway. Then, under a pile of rubbish, she found a beautiful oil lamp, almost completely covered with dirt. Then she asked him, "Why don't you ever light the lamp?" "Why should I light it?" he replied. "No one ever comes to see me. I never see anybody." "Will you promise to light it if one of my sisters comes to see you?" "Yes," he replied. "If I hear a human voice, I will light the lamp." And so 2 of Mother Teresa's nuns began to visit him on a regular basis. Things gradually improved for him. Then one day he said to the nuns, "Sisters, I'll be able to manage on my own from now on. But do me a favor. Tell that first sister who came to see me that the light she lit in my life is still burning." My friends, never underestimate the power of light to overcome the darkness. Deep darkness. Let's talk about that darkness for a minute. Since the beginning of creation, light and dark have coexisted. In our various contexts, we might see the darkness as evil or separation from God, or separation from the kingdom that Jesus was preaching about. Whatever this deep darkness represents to you, you are probably aware that it exists in tension with great light. In Jesus' time, the Roman government represented this darkness in the world. In the Old Testament account that we read from Isaiah, the force of darkness was the Assyrian army who had invaded the Jewish lands of Zebulun and Naphtali. And any people that live under an occupying force experience such darkness. Follow me. In our reading today, Jesus approaches two sets of brothers and asks them to follow him. Both sets of brothers do follow him. Our lectionary text does not give us an account of whether or not Jesus knew these brothers beforehand. But there are several things that I would like to point out about this specific section of our gospel reading. First, the brothers were seemingly leaving behind their livelihood to follow Jesus. They left their father. This would not have been the norm in the ancient Near East, because the sons would have been expected to take care of their aging parents. Jesus, like the light that we talked about before, becomes a disruptive force in this story. Truly following Jesus, and not just the image of him that we create for ourselves, has the potential to disrupt your life. It might mean that you have to leave your old way of being for something new. It might require us to make sacrifices and to be uncomfortable. It might require us to challenge systems that oppress people. As I prepared this sermon, I thought about the ways this charge to follow Jesus might impact our community here at St. Francis. I thought about the good people of this place, and I thought about the leadership of this church and how we recently met in retreat. I also thought about the passion that I saw as we visioned together what our time ahead might look like. In a very real way, the kingdom was breaking in as we discussed hosting 12-step groups and the possibility of offering English classes or budgeting classes and other ways that we might welcome the wider community to this place. Fish for people. Jesus tells the brothers who become his disciples to follow him, and he will teach them to fish for people. What does that even mean? We often consider the practical when thinking about this encounter. On one level, it is true that Jesus was asking them to leave their livelihood. What we don't always consider is that he was also asking them to leave an oppressive system. A podcast that I listen to frequently called Pulpit Fiction pointed out that the brothers were fishing for the emperor and likely taxed to the point of poverty. Jesus called them out of this cycle to a different way. They had to leave something behind. What might we need to leave behind as we follow Jesus? What might this community need to leave behind as we move forward on this new part of our journey? What will fishing for people look like? It might look like a group of wonderful Episcopalians in Ottawa opening the doors of their church to the wider community. It might look like 12-step groups meeting in our church. It might look like us inviting our neighbor to come to church with us. And it might look like offering English classes to our neighbors who want to learn English. And it might look like light disrupting the darkness.